By the time his mom slid me that note, I already knew I was in trouble. Not the kind of trouble you laugh about later. The kind that changes everything. The kind you can never tell your best friend about. My name is Ryan. I am 23, fresh out of college with a mechanical engineering degree that still feels like a weird joke. For the last 4 years, I lived in a cramped apartment near campus in Ohio, eating instant noodles and pulling all-nighters. My life was classes, coffee, and trying not to fail physics. The one steady thing through all of it was my best friend, Eric. We met freshman year in a physics class we both almost failed. He is loud and quick with a joke, the kind of guy who makes friends with the bartender, the professor, and the janitor in the same night. He is the brother I never had. The guy who showed up at 2 a.m. with pizza when I was drowning in homework and stress. Tonight was supposed to be simple, our graduation party. A joint celebration for me, Eric, and a couple of our friends. We had rented out the back patio of this small restaurant just outside town. It had wooden beams with fairy lights hanging across them, long tables with white tablecloths, and a Bluetooth speaker blasting early 2000s pop songs. The air smelled like grilled burgers and summer grass. People laughed, clinked glasses, and posed for photos. I stood near the edge of the patio with a soda in my hand, trying to look relaxed. Eric was in a navy blazer with his tie already loose, holding a crowd in the middle of the patio like he was on stage. Everyone was laughing at something he said. Typical Eric. He fit in anywhere. I always felt like background noise. That was when I saw her. Tessa, his mom. She was standing near the open bar alone, a glass of white wine in her hand. She was 42, but no one would guess that by looking at her. She wore a simple black sleeveless dress that hugged her waist just enough to show she took care of herself. Her blonde hair brushed her shoulders. The string lights above caught the warmth in her brown eyes. I had known her since high school. She used to drop off Christmas cookies at my parents' house. She asked me to feed her cat Whiskers when she was out of town. She taught me how to tie a tie before prom, her fingers moving fast while I stood there, awkward and 17. Back then, she was just Mrs. Larson, Eric's mom, safe, untouchable. Tonight, she didn't look untouchable. She looked like a woman, a beautiful, calm, slightly lonely woman, standing alone at a bar, pulled out of a world she used to fit into. Eric had told me his parents got divorced last year. His dad moved across the country. Tessa stayed and tried to build a new life. I heard it, but I never really thought about it. Not like this. Not while watching her sip her wine with that quiet distance in her eyes. I realized I was staring. My soda can was sweating in my hand, and my chest felt tight. I tried to look away. This was insane. This was Tessa. She had grounded me and Eric when we were 17 for stealing beers from her fridge. She sent me a birthday card every year with a 20 tucked inside. I had no right to be looking at her like that, but my eyes kept drifting back. The way she held her glass, the curve of her smile when someone walked by and said hello, the way her shoulders relaxed when she exhaled. My stomach twisted, half guilt, half something I did not want to name. Eric clapped a hand on my shoulder, making me jump. "Yo, Ryan, you gonna stand here all night or actually talk to people?" I shoved him lightly, forcing a laugh. Not all of us are born entertainers, man. He dragged me toward a group of friends. I joined the circle, nodded at the right times, laughed when everyone else did, but my mind kept drifting back to the bar. At one point, when I glanced over, Tessa was already looking at me. Our eyes met. It was just a second. Maybe even less. She did not smile. She did not wave. She just held my gaze for one beat longer than felt normal. Then she looked away and took another sip of her wine. My heart slammed against my ribs. I told myself it was nothing. A weird moment. The kind you forget by morning. I tried to focus on the party, on the fact that we had finally graduated, that life was supposed to be starting now. Not getting complicated, but the night kept pushing me back toward her. Later, when the playlist shifted from upbeat pop to some slow, nostalgic love song, the whole patio felt different. Softer, more intimate. Fairy lights glowed above us, People had moved on to dessert and half-hearted dancing. I was standing by the dessert table, pretending to decide between a cupcake and a brownie, when I realized I was doing it again. Looking for her. She was still at the bar. Her glass was almost empty. She was listening to one of our old professors talk, her head tilted slightly, a polite smile on her lips. Her posture was looser than I remembered. Not stiff, not the perfect mom pose. There was something else there, something like tired hope. I could not stand there hiding behind cupcakes forever, so I did the only thing that made sense in my spinning head. I walked to the bar. I told myself I was just going for another soda, that if she spoke to me it would be casual, normal, that I would feel stupid for overthinking all of this. Tessa looked up before I could chicken out. "Ryan," she said, her voice warm, the corners of her mouth lifting, "trapped by the dessert table or just hiding?" I laughed, rubbing the back of my neck. "Little of both. You know I'm not great with crowds." "You have survived worse," she teased. "Like the time I caught you and Eric with my beer." I groaned. "You are never going to let that go, are you?" "Not a chance." She took a small sip of wine, her eyes flicking over me. "You look good. You tied that yourself?" I glanced down at my navy tie, remembering the 20 minutes I spent in the mirror before the party. "Yeah, you taught me, remember?" Her smile softened. She leaned a little closer against the bar, her fingers tracing the stem of her glass. "I remember," she said, her voice quieter. "I remember more than you think." The noise around us faded. The music, the laughter, the clink of glasses, all dropped to a dull hum. It felt like someone had turned a spotlight on just the two of us. "Guess I owe you for more than Thai lessons," I said, trying to keep it light, even though my pulse was racing. "Guess you do," she said, eyes holding mine. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was charged, heavy in a way that made it hard to breathe. I knew I should back away, find Eric, rejoin the party. Anything but stand there letting the ground shift under my feet. I turned slightly, reaching for a bottle of soda on the bar. "I'm just going to grab a drink and get out of your way." I started. Her fingers brushed my elbow. Light. Barely there. But it stopped me cold. "Ryan," she said softly, "you don't have to run off." Something in her voice made my chest tighten. I looked back at her. Her face was half in shadow from the string lights. Her eyes were open, not guarded, not distant, waiting. Before I could answer, a folded white napkin slid across the bar toward my hand. Her fingertips lingered on it for a second. "For later," she said. I frowned, confused, but I took it. I did not open it there. I just felt the small square of paper in my palm, like it was burning through my skin. It was only when I stepped away, my heart pounding, that I unfolded it under the edge of the fairy lights. In neat, careful handwriting it said, "Come find me tonight." My fingers shook around that little square of paper. 4 words. Come find me tonight. The fairy lights above me blurred for a second. I blinked hard, half sure I was reading it wrong. I flipped the napkin over, like maybe there was more. Some joke, some explanation. Nothing. Just her handwriting, small and neat, like the notes she used to leave on the fridge for Eric when we were in high school. I looked up. Tessa was still at the bar, her wine glass now empty. She did not look at me. She just placed the glass down, said something to the bartender, and turned away. The dress, the lights, the calm way she moved through the crowd, it all made my chest feel tight. Maybe she did not write it. Maybe someone was messing with me. Maybe I was losing my mind. I glanced at the note again. I knew that handwriting. I had seen it on birthday cards, grocery lists stuck to her fridge, little sticky notes on Eric's door. It was hers. "Ryan, move in a little, man." Eric's voice snapped me out of it. He tugged me toward the center of the patio where someone was lining up our whole group for photos. I shoved the napkin into my pocket so fast I almost tore it. I stood between Eric and one of our friends, forcing a smile. The camera flashed. People laughed. Someone yelled for one more shot. I could feel the note against my leg. A secret no one else knew. "Dude, you look like you saw a ghost," Eric said under his breath. nudging me with his elbow. "You good?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." He grinned. "Party's not over yet. After this, we're hitting Jake's place. You better not bail." "Yeah," I said again, but my mind was nowhere near Jake's. When the group broke apart, I scanned the patio. Tessa was near the back edge now, talking to one of the professors. She laughed at something he said, but her eyes slid past him and brushed over me for half a second. No smile, no nod, just that same steady look. My heart jumped. The night moved on like nothing was different. People ate cupcakes. Someone started a toast. Parents hugged their kids. Eric gave a loud, messy speech about brotherhood and the future that made everyone cheer and wipe their eyes. I clapped at the right moments. I laughed when I was supposed to. Inside, my thoughts circled that napkin over and over. Come find me tonight. Where? Her house? Here? Was it crazy to think she meant it the way it sounded? When the party finally started to thin out, the sky was a dark blue dome over the patio, and the lights seemed brighter. People hugged goodbye, promised to keep in touch, swapped numbers they would probably never use. I watched Tessa say goodbye to a group of parents. She hugged one of the moms, smiled at a professor, then picked up her small black purse from a chair. Eric slung an arm around my shoulders. I could smell the beer on his breath. "Okay, man," he said, pointing toward the parking lot. "We're heading to Jake's. Mom's gonna close out the bill here." He leaned closer. "Hey, by the way, you could give her a hand if she needs anything. She likes you more than she likes me anyway." Quote. He laughed like it was a joke, like he had no idea what his words did to my stomach. "Sure," I said, my throat dry. He squeezed my shoulder. "Real talk, though. I might be in New York soon. For real this time. So if I bounce and she's on her own, maybe check in on her sometimes, yeah?" I looked at him. He was smiling, drunk and happy and tired, his future already pulling him forward. "Yeah," I said softly. "I will." He gave me one of those quick half hugs and jogged off toward the parking lot with our friends, calling out goodbyes. I watched him go until he disappeared behind a row of cars. When I turned back, Tessa was standing by one of the tables, stacking plates, talking quietly with the restaurant manager. I walked over, trying to act normal. "You need help?" I asked. She looked up at me, and for a moment, the whole night flashed between us. The looks, the touch on my elbow, the note. Her lips curved into a small smile. "You don't have to stay," she said. "This is your night." "I know," I said. "I want to." Her eyes held mine for a second. Then she nodded once. "You can grab those glasses and take them to the bar." We cleaned up side by side, moving around each other like we had done this 100 times, stacking plates, carrying glasses, folding linen napkins. No one else was out there now, just a couple of staff. The music was lower. The night felt closer. When everything was done, she signed the bill and thanked the manager. The patio was almost empty, the lights above us buzzing softly. "Thank you for staying," she said as we walked toward the parking lot together. Her heels clicked on the stone. "You always were the quiet, dependable one." I laughed weakly. "That makes me sound boring." She looked at me. "I don't think you're boring, Ryan." We reached her car. She leaned against the door for a moment, her purse hanging from her shoulder, her dress catching the light. I could feel the napkin in my pocket like it was burning a hole through the fabric. "Tessa," I said, my voice low, "about the note." Her eyes flicked to my pocket, then back to my face. "You read it," she said, not a question. "Yeah." Quote. A breath left her chest, slow and careful. "Then you know I meant it." My heart hammered so hard I thought she could hear it. "Come find you where?" I asked, my throat tight. She gave a small, almost shy smile. It was strange seeing her like that, not in full control. "You know where I live," she said quietly. "You have for years." I swallowed. "And if I don't?" "Then you don't," she said. Her gaze was steady, but I could see the edge of fear there. "I won't bring it up again." She opened her car door and stepped in, then paused, looking back at me over her shoulder. "I'll be home around 11, she said. "Drive safe, Ryan." Then she closed the door and pulled away, her taillights glowing red as she disappeared down the quiet street. I stood there alone in the parking lot, the night humming softly around me, my mind spinning. I could have gone to Jake's party. I could have gone home, thrown the napkin away, and pretended this never happened. Instead, 2 hours later, just before 11, I found myself driving down a familiar street lined with small, tidy houses and trimmed lawns. My hands were tight on the steering wheel. My stomach felt like it was full of rocks. Tessa's house sat at the end of the block, the same 2-story place I had been coming to since high school. The porch light was on. The living room window glowed warm and soft. I parked across the street and sat there for a full minute, my heart crashing against my ribs. I told myself to turn the car back on, to go home, to think about Eric, to think about the age gap, to think about everything that made this a bad idea. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out the napkin again. "Come find me tonight." I stepped out of the car. The air smelled like cut grass and distant rain. Crickets chirped. My shoes sounded too loud on the sidewalk. When I reached her front door, I almost turned around. Before I could, the door opened. Tessa stood there in the doorway, barefoot, her hair down, the black dress traded for a loose gray t-shirt and soft-looking jeans. The light behind her framed her like a picture. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, she stepped aside, her voice low and even. "Come in, Ryan," she said, "if you're sure you want to." Walking into her house that night felt like stepping out of my own life. I had been in this living room 100 times. Movie nights with Eric, sleepovers in high school, Super Bowl parties where Tessa brought out trays of wings and yelled at the TV louder than any of us. But it had never felt like this. It was quiet, no TV, no music, just the soft hum of the fridge in the kitchen and the faint smell of vanilla from a candle on the coffee table. Tessa closed the door behind me. For a second, I heard the click of the lock, and my heart jumped. She gave me a small smile, nervous and soft. "Do you want some water?" she asked. "Or coffee?" "Water is fine," I said. My voice did not sound like mine. She nodded and walked into the kitchen. I stood in the entryway, staring at the family photos on the wall. Eric as a kid in a baseball uniform. Tessa and her ex-husband on a beach, years younger. A picture of me and Eric at 16, arms around each other, faces sunburned from the lake. I swallowed hard. What was I doing here? Tessa came back with a glass of water. Her hands were steady. Mine were not when I took it. "Sit," she said gently, nodding toward the couch. I sat on the far cushion. She sat a few feet away, not close enough to touch. Close enough that I could feel her there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I don't want you to think I do this all the time," she said finally, her eyes on her hands. "Bring guys over. Leave notes on napkins. That is not who I am." "I know," I said quickly. "I know you are not like that." She looked up at me, searching my face. "Then what do you think I am doing, Ryan?" I stared at the glass in my hands. The water shook. I think," I said slowly, "you are lonely, and I think I am too. And I think this scares both of us." Her lips curved in a small, sad smile. "You are right," she said. "On all of it." She leaned back against the couch, resting her head for a second, eyes closed. When she opened them again, her voice was quieter. "When you were at the bar tonight," she said, "you kept looking at me. You tried to hide it, but I saw, and for the first time in a long time, I did not want to look away." My chest tightened. "I have been trying not to look," I admitted, "since before tonight, since the divorce, since you cut your hair, since you started showing up to things alone." She swallowed, her throat moving. "Why?" "Because you are Eric's mom," I said, the words rough. "Because I am too young. Because this is insane. Because every reason in the world says I should not feel this way. But I do." The words hung in the air between us, heavy, real. Tessa watched me like she was reading every line on my face. Then she shifted closer, just a few inches. It felt like miles. "I spent 20 years being a wife and a mother," she said softly. "I forgot what it felt like to be a woman, To have someone look at me and see more than all of that. At the party, when you looked at me, I felt it. And it scared me, and it made me feel alive at the same time. Her eyes glistened. She blinked it away. If you still see me as just Eric's mom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, then you should walk out that door. Tonight, you should pretend this never happened. My hand tightened on the glass. And if I don't, I asked. She took a slow breath. Then you should be very sure about what you want. Because once we step into this, we cannot go back to pretending. The room felt smaller. My heart was loud in my ears. I thought of Eric's grin at the party, his arm around my shoulders, his words, check in on her for me. I thought of the nights I lay awake replaying Tessa's laugh, the way she said my name, the way I always felt calmer around her. Not like a kid, like someone she trusted. I do not know where this goes, I said honestly. I do not know if it is right, but I know I am here, and I know I want to see you, not as someone's mom, as you. Her face softened like I had taken some weight off her shoulders. For the first time that night, she let out a small, shaky laugh. You always were honest, she said, even when you tried not to be. We fell quiet again. The air felt charged, like a storm waiting to break. Tessa leaned forward, elbows on her knees, hands clasped. I am not going to kiss you tonight, she said, and my heart jumped at the word. I am not going to rush this. I need to know you are not just caught up in a moment, that you will still feel this way when the lights are on and the party is over. The party is already over, I said. She smiled. You know what I mean. I nodded slowly. So what do you want from me? She thought for a second. I want you to go home tonight, she said. I want you to think. Really think. Not about Eric. Not about what people would say. Not about the gap between 23 and 42. I want you to think about how you feel when you are with me. And if you still want this in the morning, then you text me. What do I say? I asked. Her eyes held mine. Just say you are coming to meet me for coffee. My mouth was dry. That is it? Quote. That is it, she said. If you do not text, I will understand. I will not bring this up again. You can still come over with Eric. We can still be what we have always been. I will not punish you for choosing the simple path. And if I text? I asked. Then we see where this goes, she said. She stood up. I followed. She walked me to the door, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. My body felt heavy and light at the same time. At the door, she turned to me, her hand resting on the frame. Thank you for coming tonight, she said. You did not have to. I wanted to, I said. For a second, it felt like she might close the space between us. But she did not. She just looked at me like she was trying to memorize my face. Good night, Ryan, she said softly. Good night, Tessa. I stepped outside. The night air hit me like a wave, cool, sharp, real. I walked to my car in a daze, the porch light glowing behind me. I did not sleep much. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone on the pillow next to me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her sitting on that couch. The way her voice trembled when she said she wanted to feel alive. The way she looked at me like she saw every part of me and did not turn away. By morning, my stomach was twisted in knots. I thought about Eric, about what he would say if he ever found out, about how he told me to check in on his mom like it was nothing. Then I thought about Tessa's face when she asked me to see her, not just as a mom, as a woman. At 10:12 a.m., my hands shaking, I finally unlocked my phone. Hey, I typed, you free for coffee today? I stared at the screen for a full minute before hitting send. The second it went through, I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Her reply came less than 30 seconds later. There is a bakery near campus, she wrote. 11 a.m. I will be there. My heart sped up. I grabbed the first clean shirt I could find, pulled on jeans, and ran my fingers through my hair. The walk to the bakery felt both too fast and too slow. It was a small place I had passed 100 times but never gone into. Exposed brick walls, big windows, tables outside under striped awnings. The smell of coffee and fresh bread rolled out onto the sidewalk. Tessa was already there. She sat at a small round table outside, sunglasses pushed into her blonde hair, and an espresso cup in front of her. There was a book on the table, but she was not reading it. She was watching the street. When she saw me, a slow, careful smile spread across her face. "You came," she said, her voice warm and low. "Yeah," I said, my throat tight. Could not exactly ignore that invite. She laughed, and the sound broke something in my chest in a good way. "I was not sure you would show," she admitted. "After last night, I thought I might have scared you off." "You did," I said, "a little." Her smile faded into something softer. "And yet, you are here." "Yeah," I said again, "I am." I sat across from her. The table between us felt small. The space felt smaller. We started with simple things. She asked about my job hunt. I told her about the engineering firms I had applied to. I asked how she was doing with her freelance work. She told me about articles she was writing and how strange it felt to build a life on her own. But under every word, there was something else. Our knees brushed under the table and neither of us moved. Her hand rested near mine, close enough that the heat of her skin made it hard to think. Finally, she set her cup down and leaned forward, her eyes fixed on mine. "Ryan," she said quietly, "I need to be honest with you." "Okay," I said, my pulse jumping. "I am not the easy choice," she said. "I am 42. I have a son your age. I have baggage. I have a whole life behind me. If you want something simple, something light, you should walk away now." I shook my head. "I do not want simple," I said. "I want real." Her eyes softened at the word. "Then hear this too," she said. "I am tired of pretending I am only Eric's mom, or the woman who smiles and says she is fine. I want to feel something real again. I want to be seen. Not as a project, not as a broken person, as a woman who still has a life to live." I swallowed hard. "I see you," I said. "Not as a mom, as you." She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she said, in a voice that barely carried over the quiet noise of the street, "Not just as a woman, as the woman you are afraid to tell anyone about." Her words hit like a spark. My mind raced. Eric's face flashed in my head. But my heart felt steady for the first time in days. "I do not know what this is yet," I said. "But I know I do not want to look away from it." A slow smile tugged at her lips. It was small but real. "Good," she said softly, "because I do not either." We sat there for another hour, talking about music and books and little things that did not seem important, but somehow were. It was not the words that mattered. It was the way she looked at me like each answer meant something. The way our hands stayed close but did not quite touch. When we finally stood to leave, the sun had climbed higher in the sky. The air was warm. The world felt sharp and bright. "This stays between us," she said as we walked toward her car. Her sunglasses were back on, hiding her eyes, but her voice was clear. "Not because I am ashamed, because I know how fragile this is." "Just us," I said, "for now." She nodded once. Then she did something small that meant everything. She reached out and let her fingers slide against mine. Just for a second. Just long enough to send a shiver up my arm. Then she stepped back, opened her car door, and drove away, leaving me on the sidewalk with my heart pounding and the quiet truth sinking in. Whatever this was, it had begun. And there was no going back. The weeks after the bakery felt like stepping into a secret life. On the surface, nothing had changed. I was just a new graduate in a small Ohio town sending out resumes and pretending I knew what came next. I hung out with Eric when I could. We got wings at the bar near campus. We played video games in his half-empty apartment while he talked about his future. Underneath all of that, there was Tessa and me. It started small. She would text me about some errand she needed help with. Fixing a loose cabinet door in her kitchen. Carrying a box out of her attic. Looking at a leaky faucet she claimed was too stubborn to twist off. Each time I went over, it felt less like a favor and more like an excuse to be near her. Her house became a quiet place outside of time. The same two-story home I had known for years, but now every corner felt different. There was always something warm on the stove. Soup simmering. Bread cooling on a rack. A candle lit on the counter. We would talk while I worked, about my job searches, about her writing, about how strange it was to move on after a divorce. Sometimes we ended up on the couch, sitting a little too close, a record spinning in the background while we shared songs from her old collection. We did not rush it. We did not cross every line at once, but the space between us kept getting smaller. Some nights our shoulders would touch. Some nights her hand would brush mine and stay there for a breath too long. I could feel something building, slow and steady, like a tide rising. The guilt came with it. Eric had always been part of this house. His photos were still on the walls. His old trophies lined the shelf in the hall. Sometimes I would sit at Tessa's table, hear her laugh, feel her hand on my arm, and picture his face if he walked in and saw us. One evening we met at a diner on the edge of town. Eric had texted me earlier that day. "Got the internship in New York, man. I'm actually going. Drinks tonight?" He was grinning when I walked into the bar. The city lights from the TV flickered on his face. "This is it," he said, clinking his glass against mine. "Real job. Real city. Real chaos." "That's huge," I said, and I meant it. I was proud of him. He went on and on about apartments and subways and new friends he would make. I smiled and nodded, but my chest felt tight. Then, almost like he had just remembered, he said, "Hey, my mom's gonna be on her own again. You know how she is. Strong, but stubborn. Check in on her sometimes if you're still in town, yeah? Grab dinner with her. She likes you." My heart thudded. I forced my face to stay relaxed. "Yeah," I said, "sure." He slapped my shoulder. "You always come through, man." That night, after I left Eric at the bar, I drove to Tessa's. She opened the door before I could knock twice. She wore a soft-looking sweater and jeans, her hair pulled back, a streak of flour on her wrist. The smell of fresh bread and garlic drifted through the house. "You made it," she said, stepping back. "You cooked," I answered, trying to smile. "Little celebration," she said, "for you finally getting an interview, and for Eric." We sat at her small table with 2 plates of pasta and a loaf of bread between us. For a few minutes we talked about normal things. How my interview had gone. What New York might be like for Eric. The way the weather was finally starting to feel like real summer, but her eyes kept drifting to me. And mine kept drifting to her hands on the fork, on the glass, on the table. She set her fork down and wiped her mouth with a napkin. "Eric called me today," she said. "He is excited. He said you might visit him." "Yeah," I said. "He mentioned it. He also said," she added, her eyes searching mine, "that you would check in on me, have dinner with me sometimes, make sure I am not lonely." The words sat heavy between us. We both knew what he did not know. "What did you say?" I asked. She let out a small breath. "I said you are a good friend," she said. "And that, I trust you." I stared at my plate. "Do you?" She was quiet for a second. Then she spoke in a low, steady voice. "I trust you more than I trust anyone," she said. "And that is what scares me." My chest ached. "This feels wrong and right at the same time," I said. "Wrong because of him. Right because when I am here, with you, I feel like I am exactly where I am supposed to be." Her eyes glistened, but she did not look away. "I hate the phrase, starting over," she said softly. "Like the years before did not matter. I do not want to start over. I just want to keep going. But this time I want someone beside me, not behind me, not in front of me, beside me." The words hit something deep. I reached across the table and placed my hand over hers. Her fingers tensed, then relaxed under my touch. "Then let me walk beside you," I said. "I do not know how this ends. I do not know what happens if Eric finds out. But I know I care about you. I know you are not a mistake. And I know I do not want to go back to pretending you are just his mom to me." Quote. Tessa's lips trembled as she tried to smile. "Do you know what you are asking for?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Chaos, fear, secrets, but also you." She laughed at that, a soft, shaky sound, and a tear finally slipped free. She brushed it away with the back of her hand. "Come here," she said. We both stood at the same time. The chair legs scraped the floor. We met halfway between the table and the sink. For a second, we just stood there. close enough that I could see the tiny freckles near her eyes, the way her pulse moved at her throat. Her hand came up and rested against my chest. I covered it with mine. "This is not a game," she said. "If you change your mind, if this gets too hard, you have to tell me. Do not disappear on me. Do not make me question everything again." "I will not," I said. "Promise?" she asked. "I promise." She studied my face one last time, as if she was still looking for a reason to pull back. She did not find one. When we finally crossed that last bit of space between us, it was not like in the movies. There were no fireworks outside, no dramatic music, just the quiet sound of our breathing, the soft press of her lips, the way her hands slid up to my shoulders like she had been holding herself back for years. It did not feel like winning something forbidden. It felt like finally stepping into a truth that had been waiting for both of us. Later, we sat on the couch, her curled into my side, my arm around her. The TV was on, but neither of us was watching. The room was dim, lit only by a small lamp in the corner. "I do not know how we tell him," I said, my voice low, "or when, or if we ever do." "Not now," she said. "He needs space to grow, to live his own life. He does not need this on his shoulders yet." "So we stay quiet," I said. "For now," she answered, "but quiet does not mean fake. When you are here, I want you to feel like you can be yourself. I do not want you hiding in your own life." I nodded, my fingers tracing small circles on her arm. "What if he hates me one day?" I asked. "What if he hates you?" She was quiet for a long time. "Then we deal with it," she said, "together. If we are going to do this, we face the cost together. Not as a secret fling, as something real." I looked down at her. "Is that what this is?" Quote. She tilted her head back to look at me. "What do you think it is?" Quote. I thought about the first night at the bar, the napkin in my pocket. The way she said, "You do not have to run off." The way she looked at me like she had been waiting for me to see her. "I think," I said slowly, "it started with 4 words on a napkin and turned into the first thing in a long time that feels like more than a moment." She smiled then. Not sad, not guarded, just warm. "I can live with that," she said. Days turned into weeks. Eric moved to New York. He sent us photos from crowded streets and rooftops. We sent back messages and jokes. He called his mom at night. Sometimes he called me too. He talked about work and roommates and the city. He never asked what I was doing when I was at her house. Life went on. The fear did not vanish, but it settled into the background, like a low hum. What stayed in front was simpler. It was Tessa making coffee while I fixed a loose door handle. It was me cooking breakfast in her kitchen on a Sunday morning while she read at the table. It was her head on my shoulder while we watched some old movie and argued about the ending. One night, months after that graduation party, we were sitting on her porch. The air was cool. The sky above us was clear and dark. The sound of distant traffic drifted across the quiet street. I reached into my wallet and pulled out a worn, folded napkin. The ink was faded from being opened and closed so many times, but the words were still clear. "Come find me tonight." Tessa saw it and laughed softly. "You kept that?" "Yeah," I said. "Guess I did." "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Finding me?" I looked at her, at the woman sitting beside me, the woman who had been a part of my life for years without me even knowing how much she would matter. "Not for a second," I said. "Do you?" She shook her head, her eyes bright. "No," she said. "I think that was the first honest thing I had done for myself in a long time." Quote. I slid the napkin back into my wallet and took her hand in mine. It was still a secret. It was still messy. It was still full of unknowns. But as we sat there under the Ohio sky, fingers laced, her head leaning against my shoulder, I knew one thing for sure. The night of his graduation party, his mom slid me a note. I found her. And she found me too.